draft National Pollutant Discharge and Elimination System permit for Gelman Sciences, Wagner Road. Glad to have you all here with us this evening. My name is Jim Ostrowski, and I work in EGLE's Environmental Support Division. I'll moderate tonight's session and just kind of hang out in the background, help things flow tonight. So you'll be seeing me periodically and also helping with comments as we get to them. I want to run through a couple of housekeeping guidelines before we get started. And I understand a lot of you may have never attended an EGLE public meeting before. So hopefully if this is your first time, it's easy to understand. Pretty basic stuff. What we're going to do tonight is start out with an introduction. We're going to introduce all the staff that are here with us tonight. And we've got the meeting tonight broken down really into two different parts. We've got an information session. That's the first part, in which we'll have some EGLE staff describe the proposed reissuance and all that goes along with that. And then we're going to open it up to some questions and answers. So that part of our tonight's session is pretty informal. That'll take us up to about 6:45 if we need to go that long. If not, we'll just jump right into the second part. But that first part's an informal, informational session. And then when we're done with that, we get done with the questions and answers, we're going to go to the official public comment process. And that's what a lot of you here are here for tonight. And that's to submit an official public comment. And that's a little more formal part of tonight's hearing. And I'm going to read off a hearing statement and then start listening to your comments. We're going to have staff here that are going to do that during the official hearing. So we're going to make it very clear tonight when that time occurs and explain again how you make a comment and how that works. So don't worry if you don't catch it right away. We're also going to wrap up tonight and talk about who to contact with further questions if you have them. All right, so just a couple other guidelines about tonight. The lines are all muted until we get to the Q&A part and the public comment part, in which case, if you choose to make a comment or if you want to verbally ask a question, we're going to explain to you how to unmute your mic when they get to that point. If you have a question tonight, you can submit it using the Zoom toolbar. So if you look on your toolbar, you have a Q&A box. You can type your question in that way. If you are calling in tonight, you can ask questions by hitting #2. And I'm looking at our attendee list, and I'm not seeing anybody calling in using just the phone. So if we do, I'll remind people about that again. We are also recording this public meeting, just like we do all of them. We post it up on the YouTube channel. I also want to point your attention to the chat, because during tonight, we'll be dropping a few things into the chat that you might be interested in, a couple of links. With me tonight in the background is Ryan Blazik, and he's going to be putting stuff into the chat tonight and helping me out in the background as well. With that, I'm going to turn over to Jessica Stiles, and we've got a lot of EGLE staff here tonight, so she's going to introduce herself and turn it over to EGLE staff to introduce themselves as well. So, Jessica, if you want, you can go ahead and share your screen, and we can start introductions.
Does that look right, Jim?
You're sharing in presenter mode. So if you just go over to display settings and hit, there you go.
Here,
hit swap.
Let's try it again.
There you go.
All righty.
All set.
So let's smell that. Okay. All right. Well, as Jim said, we do have a lot of staff, so go ahead and take us away.
Good evening. I'm Chris Alexander, and I manage permit section.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tarek Buckmaster, and I supervise the industrial permits unit.
Hello, I'm Christy Elwin, and I supervise the stormwater permits unit in permit section.
Hi, I'm Amanda Bozak, and I supervise our water quality and aquatic nuisance control permits unit.
Hi, I'm Glenn Schmidt. I'm an aquatic biologist in permit section.
Hi, I'm Tiffany Myers. I'm the Jackson District Supervisor for Water Resources Division.
Bridget Carver, NPDS compliance staff for the current NPDS permit.
Hello, my name is Andrea Munoz Hernandez. I'm the district supervisor for the Remediation and Redevelopment Division in Jackson.
And good evening. I'm Chris Swoboda. I'm the Remediation and Redevelopment Division Project Manager for Gelman.
All right, and I'm Jessica Stiles. I'm the NPDS permit writer for this permit. So I think you've been receiving some emails from me about this hearing and the public notice. So that's me. And Jim, before I get really started, I just want to double check that we're seeing all the slides correctly then.
We are seeing your slides, so you're good to
Okay.
go. And I think everybody else can go ahead and turn their cameras off. And Jessica, take it away.
All right, great, thanks. So yeah, here we are just to chat about this. I gotta change thanks for everybody's patience here with displays, but yeah, so I'm Jessica Stiles. I'm with the Water Resources Division. I'm now in the Stormwater Permits Unit, and I've kind of kept this permit as in my task list since moving from the Industrial Permits Unit. As you noticed, we did have several RRD staff or Remediation and Redevelopment Division staff here, because we recognize that this site does have more divisions that are involved than just Water Resources Division or WRD. But to start off the presentation, we'll go ahead and discuss the NPDS process and where permit section fits in with Michigan's government. So our functions are all those that are listed there. We all know that we love our water here in this state. So we fit into Michigan's government as part of the Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy, EGLE as we're commonly called with the acronym. And EGLE's job is to protect Michigan's environment and public health by managing air, water, land, and energy resources. And so within EGLE, we are part of Water Resources Division, and Water Resources Division is tasked with ensuring Michigan's waters are safe and clean for what we call protected uses, such as things like drinking and recreation, fishing, and a healthy overall aquatic ecosystem. And Water Resources Division has a variety of programs such as wetland and floodplain regulation, critical dune protection, and of course the NPDS permit issuance process, which is what we're going to get more into today. And so we're kind of keep drilling down in EGLE. And so to get to permit section, we're within Water Resources Division. And we issue all the wastewater discharge permits to surface waters and groundwaters of the state of Michigan. And the surface water discharges are covered by that National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System. And our NPDS permits, they are for wastewater discharges to surface waters of the state, and they can come from municipal, industrial, and commercial facilities to surface waters of the state under the Federal Clean Water Act and state law. So this includes a wide variety of facilities such as private wastewater treatment plants, public wastewater treatment plants, steam electric power plants, sand and gravel mines, manufacturing facilities, contaminated groundwater treatment systems, and construction projects, just to name a few that we have. So this is a slide that kind of shows where our rules are. So we issue permits under the National Resources and Environmental Protection Act, or NREPA 451, and Part 31 Water Resources Protection of NREPA regulates all wastewater discharges in the state of Michigan. And within Part 31, there are a number of rules that have promulgated. In particular, we operate under the Part 21 wastewater discharge permit rules that set out standards for NPDS permits, and the Part 4 water quality standards, and Part 8, which are water quality based effluent development of toxic substances and rules, all of which allow Water Resources Division to implement the law. And our NPDS permit is only one piece of the puzzle. And as we noted earlier, we have folks from RRD here to listen in and maybe help answer some questions. But just because someone has an NPDES permit doesn't mean that they don't need permits from other areas, other governments. And so, like I said, yeah, it's a piece of the puzzle. And we administer the Part 31 rules in accordance with federal NPDES permit requirements. So with the NPDES permitting process, this regulates discharge of pollutants into surface waters of the state. The permit includes multiple mechanisms for controlling the discharge of pollutants, such as effluent limitations, monitoring requirements, and other conditions for site-specific concerns. There are two types of standards used to develop limitations for a proposed discharge, including treatment technology-based standards and water quality-based standards. For our water quality-based effluent limitations, these are established to protect the designated uses of our surface waters. So this includes uses such as fishing, swimming, and aquatic life. Water quality-based effluent limits are really driven by the receiving water quality. Our biologists and engineers use a variety of information from the application and existing site-specific water quality data, and they are the ones who recommend limitations for parameters that are expected to be present at levels of concern. And again, all within our Part 31 rules. And the other type of effluent limitations that we can develop are the treatment technology-based effluent limitations. And since that's a mouthful, I'm going to start saying TBELs. TBELs are based on the national evaluation of a specific industry and the treatment technologies used at certain types of facilities. And so this is EPA, and what they do is they develop these effluent limit guidelines for particular treatment technology. If EPA does not have effluent limit guidelines developed, then we can use best professional judgment to develop those treatment technology-based effluent limits, TBELs. And we incorporate these technology-based effluent limitations in NPDES permits that correspond to the application of an identified technology, but we don't require dischargers to install the identified technology. The same goes with EPA's rules, but we leave this to each facility, the discretion to select the technology, design, or process changes necessary to meet the TBEL specified in the NPDES permit. And so that's just, again, it's all in line with the rules that we are enacting for our permits. And in general, the draft NPDES permits are developed using information submitted in the application documents and the recommendations provided by our water quality-based reviews and our treatment technology-based reviews. And in cases where maybe we have for the same parameter, but we have two different limits based on the water quality and the treatment standards. So in that case, we use the most stringent limit. So that way we make sure that all the limits are being met. And just as an example, if there was a limitation for chlorine and it was water quality base said, oh, it's 10 milligrams per liter. And then our technology base says, well, it's 5 milligrams per liter. We would choose the 5 milligrams per liter. So that way it's meeting both of those standards. Yeah. And the other thing too is with the monitoring requirements, we make sure that those are consistent with other types of dischargers. So next, we'll just talk about this table, which is found in the basis for decision memo. And this shows the various limitations that were developed. So we have our water quality-based effluent limit for the discharge to the tributary to Honey Creek. You can see the calculated water quality-based effluent limit for the Huron River at the edge of the critical assessment zone, which is approximately a 3,000-foot radius from the public drinking water intake. And then, of course, we have the calculated T-bills. And these were, again, they were because EPA doesn't have ELGs for this type of permit. We developed these based on best professional judgment. And in order to protect water quality and account for the treatment technology performance, we have to, again, choose that most stringent limit so that way all the limitations are met. So in this case, we have 3 different calculated effluent limitations, and they're all met with having the T-bills in the permit itself. So that's why it's bolded there, because as you can see, across the board, those are the most stringent of those 3 calculations. And the driving limitation for the permittee is the monthly average limitation of 7.0 micrograms per liter. So part of the best professional judgment considerations for the 1,4-dioxane effluent limit includes a discussion with the permittee about the ability to increase pumping capacity and meet NPDES permit limitations. And we, WRD, we didn't want to set limits so stringent that they prevented Gelman from increasing remediation efforts. But again, you can see that the limitations are the most stringent of the calculated effluent limitations that we have to choose from. And this table lists the proposed parameters that the permittee will sample the discharge for. This table also notes the monitoring frequency for each of these parameters. And all of these parameters were considered and evaluated as expected pollutants in the discharge from the facility. This table looks largely the same as their currently extended effluent limit table page. And so on this next slide, I'm going to list the changes, but I kind of want to leave this up. I know this is a lot of information on this slide here. So just to, and again, this is found in the draft permit. You can find it in the basis for decision memo, which is in that public notice link. But just to summarize those proposed changes, we've got, these are all based on our data. They're following within our rules. So our biologists, they look at all the water quality considerations, including water treatment additives. So the addition of monitoring requirements for chloride and sulfates is based on our WRD chloride and sulfate implementation plan. It's not necessarily because we found it in the discharge or expect it to be there. And then based on the water quality-based effluent limitation recommendation, the proposed permit includes an annual monitoring requirement, replacing the effluent limitation for barium. And then for ozone and hydrogen peroxide, those are both have limitations that are below the quantification level. And so basically we're just listing it in the permit because my Enviro has gotten better and can now understand and accept that less than symbol. So that's really the change. It wasn't different from the last permit. It's just being added in. And we did receive several public comments, and we're going to continue to accept those through June 30th. But we wanted to go over a couple of the main ones that we did see in there just to try and help answer some of those questions that we received. And again, we're continuing to review those comments and we will provide a response. And we'll add whatever comments that we get tonight to the list and add it to our response too. So one of those common questions is, does the NPDES permit consider private residential wells? The NPDES permits protect public drinking water supplies, but I did want to point out here too that the consent judgment does not, or does include a trigger level if residents find 1,4-dioxane in levels that are meeting that trigger level. And if that is found, then Gelman will have to take action, but I'm not well versed in the consent judgment as it's not an NPDES program. And then one of the other comments or questions that we've received is, are the draft NPDES permit effluent limitations protective of Ann Arbor's public water intake in Barton Pond? And this is another one where WRD, we worked with the Drinking Water and Environmental Health Division just to make sure that we're covering all of our bases and really being as protective as possible. And so through the procedure, through a series of reviews, we determined that the proposed effluent limitations in the permit are protective of the critical assessment zone at the intake location. And then one of the other main kind of topics of the comments had to deal with the treatment technology based effluent limitations. And folks were wondering if we did a review to find the best available technology and require that in the permit. And as previously, I was talking about our T-bells and how EPA develops them and what EPA requires, which of course is what we have to require, is that we don't designate a particular treatment type. We come up with effluent limitations that are based on like a general treatment technology that can be studied, and then we go from there. And sometimes in cases where the only treatment technology that we know of is with the permittee that we are currently under reissuance, we use their data to go through and develop that. And if anybody has more comments or questions, and maybe you don't want to take the opportunity tonight to do so, or maybe something really just dawns on you later, you can go ahead and add a public comment to the public notice in MyEnviro. So when you log, or you don't have to log in, excuse me, just click on MyEnviro page and then you go to the public notice search. And then from there, you can narrow down to that permit by typing in Gelman in the site name filter, and it should be the only one popping up. And then you can go to that far right and then click that view and submit comment button. And you can, right here, it just gives the details of this site. You can see that there's a documents tab across the top, and that's where you're going to find all the documents that are associated with this reissuance process. So go ahead and take a look. I think I mentioned the basis of the decision memo is pretty good information in there. And then of course, across the top is that add comment button. If you click on that, it will take you to this screen where you can, if you keep scrolling down, I couldn't get it all in the same screenshot here, but you can actually upload comments if you have something written. So it doesn't have to be all within that comments box. All right, and I think this is where I'm going to hand it back to Jim.
All right, thanks, Jessica. I am going to just remind people that if you have a question, you can type it in the question box or click the raise hand icon if you'd rather do that. I'm going to share my screen here just to give me a second. There we go. So just want to remind everybody, if you have a question, go ahead and raise your hand or type it in there. We don't have any questions right now, but I'll give it a minute because I know there might be a little delay. If you're on the phone, and like I said, I don't see any people that are just calling in on the phone, but if you were, you hit #2 on your phone, and that shows us that you're raising your hand. Give it a second here. I will, while we're waiting, I will take a little liberty here and ask. I did have a couple questions of my own that I want to make sure we're clear with people, Jessica, because a lot of acronyms were used in your presentation. I want to make sure if I go back to one of your slides, slide 15 here, just want to make sure people understand what this means, WQBEL, what that stands for, and TTBEL on this chart right here.
Yeah, we had quite the alphabet soup, and I do my best to define those, but that WQBEL is water quality based effluent limitation, and then the T-bell is the treatment technology based effluent limitation. We don't pronounce the W when we shorten that Q-bell, so it's just the Q-bell instead of the T-bell. So those are the two definitions for that.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure people understood that part of it. And because We do use a lot of acronyms at EGLE.
Yeah.
And if anybody's got any questions about anything we've said or any acronyms we've used, please raise your hand, type it in the question box. We want to make sure you understand. And it does look like we have a person with their hand raised. Rob's got his hand raised, so we're going to unmute you, Rob, and you can go ahead and ask your question. Go ahead. Yeah, thanks for your question. Jessica, do you want to take that or you want to hand it off to somebody else on the team here?
I think that Andrea or Chris Savota would be good to answer this question.
Hi there, and Rob, thanks for your question. So there were a couple parts there. If I miss any of them, please let me know so I can, go back and fill in those blanks. But there are the Remediation and Redevelopment Division, we have a monitoring program where we sample residential wells annually, and those are those that have been within a certain distance of a previous detection. Typically, we would want your water quality to be below the state drinking water protection criteria, which is 7.2 parts per billion. However, as Jessica mentioned earlier, there is a provision in our consent judgment, and there's some nuance to this, but essentially the best way to express it is that if we find a private drinking water well through our reconnaissance program above 3 parts per billion, then that is an action level. And at that point, Gelman would provide drinking water, bottled drinking water for your home, and continue sampling pretty regularly to make sure that you're drinking safe water. Yes. So we typically map the edge of the plume. We have a GIS mapping project that we put out there for public information. And we typically, the margin is 3 parts per billion. So that sort of bottled water requirement in our consent judgment. When Scioto Township did their testing, we added a bunch of homes to our annual sampling as a result of that. So we don't use the method 522. We use a method called the EPA 8260 SIM that's sensitive down to a 1/2 of a part per billion. And so that any, detections above that, we would be able to determine if there was any action needed there.
Yeah, thanks for asking your question. We did have a question come in through our question box here. It relates again to water wells and protection. This person is asking, please explain how our wells will be protected from effluent discharge. I presume that means discharging dioxin into the water. Where will it be pumped into the water supply? Jessica, you want to handle that one?
Yeah, I think I'll try and start things off. So our permit effluent limitations protect the surface water quality. And so how it gets into the wells, because I guess we've had some comments saying that Honey Creek and that tributary to Honey Creek where the discharge is gaining and losing stream. And so our limits are protective of, again, that surface water quality. And I think that's where we have to lean on when it comes to private drinking water wells. I think that's where we lean on RRD and the consent judgment for that. Chris Alexander, did you have anything to add to that?
Nope. Chris, from RRD, do you have anything to clarify?
Just that, we do maintain that residential well sampling program to make sure that, if there's a change in the water quality or if people are being exposed, that we can take action.
Yeah, it's just going to be adding a little bit, please, like you mentioned. I mean, like we work in collaboration with the Washington County Local Health Department, and every year like, there is some conversations about which wells should be sampled. And I think in 2023 we have about 250 wells, so it is a good effort. So yes.
Okay. Thank you all. Just want to make sure you guys see in the chat, there's a couple links Ryan dropped into there. One's a link to My Enviro, where all the information related to this application is stored, so you can find it in there, a lot of the information that we've discussed tonight. Also, we put in there a GIS map, a map of the Gelman site that you can take a look at, which you might find interesting as well. Another question in our question box. In its establishment of Gelman's discharge limit, why has EGLE ignored the 1998 to 2003 consented cases ruling of a discharge limit of 5 parts per billion by the administrative law judge? So can someone here address that case and how it relates to this?
I'm sorry, I think that would probably take a little bit of consultation with the Attorney General before we could provide a coherent answer.
Yeah, if that's something that no one here is comfortable answering, certainly I can forward this question on to our team here and follow up later on. And again, at the end of tonight's session, I'll make sure and you'll have contact information to reach out. Okay, Roger, you want to ask your question or elaborate?
Yeah, that was my question.
Okay.
Because I was part of that contested case. I was actually one of the witnesses in the contested case. And Gelman wanted to discharge 60 to 100 parts per billion partially treated dioxin into the Honey Creek. And that, of course, would have been disastrous for people down gradient and perhaps for Ann Arbor's water supply. So we actually won. We were asking for 0 to 3 parts per billion, and the judge mostly agreed with us and ruled for 5 parts per billion. And that's what, in the old days, before the EGLE administration, that would have gone before the Natural Resources Committee because it would have been part of the DNR, and they would have rubber stamped that, and that would have been the discharge limit. But because the DEQ had been taken out of the DNR and put under EGLE's direct control, the DEQ director at that point, without any evidence, without any justification, doubled that limit to 10 parts per billion. Now remember, this is at a time when the standards for dioxin had been loosened by a factor of 25 from 3 parts per billion, which is close to what other states who value water more, been loosened from 3 parts per billion to 77 parts per billion, and then a couple years later rounded up to 85 parts per billion, which we were stuck with for 15 years or so. So 5 parts per billion when the
Roger,
I'm sorry to interrupt. Was 85.
Roger
was a pretty.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but this is the Q&A session. So do you have a question? Because a lot of the comments you've given are really good, but they might be more applicable to the public comment period we're hosting in just a minute.
Well,
if you have a question,
this is a lead into a question.
Okay.
How come you guys didn't know about this in drafting this permit?
Does anybody on this team can you address that, or?
Does one part of the EGLE talk to the other part at all?
We are here together today, and I mean, I can say we've done a lot of research and gone back into just all the files. So I can't really speak to why that wasn't included, if it wasn't. It takes a deeper dive, I think, just to double check, like Chris was saying earlier.
Yeah, thanks. And Roger, I would say that if this is a concern, you should definitely, state it in the public comment. So it's an actual public comment.
Well, I've put it in public comments before, but I think a lot of people forgot about it.
Okay, well, yeah.
This was ruled by EGLE's, which at that time DEQ's own administrative law judge. This was a long series of hearings, and that was the result, only to be overturned willy-nilly by the DEQ director at the time.
All right. Well, if you haven't submitted a comment, please do so. Otherwise, make sure you make that comment tonight during the hearing, and we'll move on at this point. Okay, right now I'm going to continue to open it up for additional questions if people have them before we move on to our official hearing, like I just mentioned. So if someone does have a comment, a concern that they want to voice for an official comment, you can make that at that point. But first, I want to make sure no one else has any questions for the team here tonight. Like I said, we got a pretty robust team from EGLE to answer your questions. Okay, it looks like Rob's got his hand up again. Go ahead, Rob. Go ahead. Sure. Mm-hmm.
So Rob, I'll take your question. We updated the map with 2023's sampling data that Gelman collects around the plume. I can't, I don't have like a number of the change in aerial extent between the 2020 plume and the 2023 observations, but they are not that much different. I wouldn't necessarily characterize the plume as having grown. I think things that we're observing relatively stable concentrations at many of the monitoring wells, and we don't have like the 2020 plume versus the 2023 plume, available for direct comparison, but I can't say there's much difference over the last few years.
Okay, Chris, thanks for answering that question. Another question has come into the box. Person's asking, will the discharge of dioxane into the water supply be using the latest technology available rather than technology that might cause secondary pollutants?
I'll take this one, Jim. So in the presentation, we were talking about those technology-based effluent limitations and how those are determined. So EPA has what are called effluent limit guidelines, or ELGs, and they look at like an industry, say steel making, and they take a look and see what types of technology these companies are using, and then they average it out. And this is, of course, decades ago when they did these calculations, and basically they develop these limitations, but they don't require the permittee to install a particular type of technology. And that's just the way, that's just how the rules are written. We have to allow the discharger to determine what type of technology is going to work best for them, but also meet those limits. So while we don't have EPA effluent guidelines for this type of discharge, we use best professional judgment and we just went back and looked at the current technology and what it's able to achieve, which is it's consistent with all of the rules. But yeah, because like how the NPDES permitting process works is that the permittee submits a lot of data. They tell us, what treatment they're planning to use, where they're going to discharge. And so we review everything based on what they submit. So we don't require certain treatment technologies to be installed.
All right. Thanks, Jessica, for explaining that. I've got time for like one or maybe two more questions. This next one is pretty important here. I want to make sure I get to it. What action does Gelman propose to take if the discharge exceeds maximum effluent limitations? So what happens if they exceed the maximum effluent limitations?
I
I
think
want to address that.
and
Jessica, Tiffany's here if you
Thank
want to
you.
have the compliance staff chime in.
Thanks. And Tiffany, you there?
Yep, couldn't get my microphone unmuted.
Can you explain your role once again?
Yes, I am the Jackson District Supervisor for Water Resources Division. Bridget Carver is also on. She is the compliance person that oversees this facility. So if they were to exceed their effluent limits, which happens not at this facility necessarily, but it happens. Things happen. If it became an issue where it was happening frequently, we would look at escalating enforcement, which could include things like fines, making them install different treatment if there was something available that could help them meet the limits.
Yeah, I'll just add in too that as far as compliance goes, Gelman has not, they have been meeting all of their permit limits for a long time now. There have not been any exceedances since 2021. And the exceedance that did happen was very minor, and it was actually due to some unanticipated upsets that were kind of unforeseen. That does happen at every facility, whether it's this type of facility, industrial or municipal. They do have a requirement to report that to us within 24 hours, and then they get us a written report within 5 days of that exceedance to give us their next steps and to determine how to prevent something like this or something like this, whatever scenario they're working with at the time, how to prevent that in the future. So additional, they have the requirement to let us know immediately within that 24 hours, but it's also going to be self-reported in the discharge monitoring reports that are submitted monthly, that myself and sometimes Tiffany will review on a monthly basis. So, and like she said, if there is something that is continuous, we would discuss it and possibly escalate enforcement.
Thanks, Tiffany and Bridget. All right, got time for like one more question, and we're gonna, I guess we got two questions that popped in here. Chris, this might be for you, relating to maps. This person's asking, has the Scioto Township homeowner well samples been updated in the EGLE's database and show on EGLE's plume maps? If so, wouldn't viewers see that the plume has grown more than a mile north of EGLE's and Gelman's plume map extent? So can you address the well samples from Scioto Township?
Yeah, definitely. We're still working on getting all of the residential homeowner well data that we've collected into our database. However, that said, the limits of the plume that we show on our GIS mapping software, those are at 3 parts per billion. And there have not been any detections at or above 3 parts per billion in the residential wells in Scioto Township. So those would not appear on our GIS map. That information is on that GIS is up to date up until 2022. As I mentioned, we're working on making sure that that database is complete. But yeah, until something goes above 3, it wouldn't appear in that map.
Thanks, Chris.
Mhm.
All right, last question for our team before we go and move over to the hearing. Is the permit limited to Huron River discharge? Any permitting impact to Scioto Township plume area? Somebody
Maybe
Is
be
the-
helpful to look at the fact sheet, which is in the public hearing documents. Because that's going to point out where the discharge is relative to the facility, it's pretty close, but this permit is for the discharge from the facility to an unnamed tributary to Honey Creek. And then, of course, that's about 6 miles upstream of Ann Arbor's water intake in Barton Pond.
Okay. And you said there's a fact sheet in my Enviro that
Yeah.
okay. And maybe Ryan, if you could put that in the chat again, where people can find that fact sheet. It should be in the link that he provided, but we'll see if we can add a more direct link to it in the My Enviro system so people will access that. Okay, I did see a couple more just comments in here, but just want to tell people if you have a comment, they're good ones. They are, if you did put in here, please let us know in the public comment period because that's what the comments are for.
Hey, Jim,
yeah.
Jim, can I
Go ahead,
respond
Derek.
to that comment from Trish too? That
Yeah,
was a
go ahead,
follow. That was a
elaborate.
follow-up to her previous
Okay.
question. So, yes, this particular technology does result in some other compounds being discharged, bromate being one of them. Also, hydrogen peroxide is discharged, and there's a potential for ozone to be discharged as they're part of the treatment process. So, when we do our evaluation of the treatment technologies, we don't specify, as Jessica said, we don't specify a particular technology be used. We just evaluate the potential discharges from those treatment systems and ensure that all standards will be met. So we do have regular monitoring requirements for bromate. We do have effluent limitations in the permit. So we do monitor those potential off products from the treatment process. So that is something that we do consider when we're doing our evaluations.
Thanks, Derek. All right. Okay, buddy, we're about ready to wrap up our Q&A session and move into the next part of our public meeting tonight, which is the part where we talk about official comments and we take your official comments. Just going to start off by saying there are several different ways you can make an official comment besides making a verbal comment tonight. You can put it in My Enviro, and Ryan's going to share a link in just a minute. You can also send it to Jessica directly by mail, and you see the email or the mailing address right there, which I'll read off in just a moment. And comment period does close on June 30th, so you want to get it in by then. So tonight, even if you don't make your comment, you think of it later, you can always submit it later on. So with that, what I'm going to do when we do public hearings is we kick it off with an official hearing statement, and then we open it up to you all to make your comments. So I'm going to read off our hearing statement, and I'll let our team here, you guys can go ahead and turn your cameras off until we get to the hearing, and then I'll have our hearings people come back on in just a minute. Thanks everyone for your time tonight. All right, so I'm going to start off by reading our public hearing statement, and you'll please forgive me. I've got my eyes trained somewhere else so I can actually read it here. This public hearing will be used to take comments on the proposed reissuance of the MPDES discharge permit for the discharge treated groundwater to an unnamed tributary to Honey Creek. The proposed reissuance is for the Gelman Sciences LLC Wagner Road facility. This facility is located at 642 South Wagner Road in Ann Arbor, Michigan. So how will the comment process work today? For those of you who have pre-registered to attend today's hearing and indicated you would like to make a comment, we will call your name and unmute your microphone so you can make your comment. We will call your name in the order in which you registered. Once we have called the names of everyone who indicated they wanted to make a comment during registration, we'll open it up to comments from other attendees. At that time, if you have not made a comment and wish to do so, please click the raise hand icon to indicate you wish to make a comment. If calling in by phone, please hit #2 on your phone to raise your hand. We'll call on those who have had their hand raised to make a comment in the general order in which their hand was raised. Each person will have 5 minutes to make their comment. I will indicate when you have 1 minute left and when your time has expired. If I indicate your time has expired, please wrap up your comments immediately so that we can allow the next person to make their comment. Please be sure to state your name and any organization you represent prior to starting your comment. If you would like to make a comment but do not wish to make a verbal comment today, you are welcome to submit a written comment to the department. Written comments may be submitted online in our MyEnviro database. A link is being provided in the chat directly to the comment submittal form. Comments can also be submitted to Jessica Stiles at the following address: Water Resources Division, EGLE, P.O. Box 30458, Lansing, Michigan, 48909-7958. This hearing is being recorded, and your comments will be part of the information that the department will consider in the proposed groundwater discharge general permit. Comments received will not be responded to at this time, but will be included in the response to public comment documents and be part of the permit record. All comments and information received will be available in MyEnviro, our online database. The public comment period is open until June 30th, 2024. So just a reminder, as we go through things tonight, there we go. You'll be given 4 minutes tonight to make your comment, and we're just going to be listening. So the team is going to be here just listening, taking notes to what you're saying. They're not going to be responding. I'll call your name. You'll be unmuted, and we'll let you know that. And then you will see a little clock appear up in the right-hand corner of your screen, and you'll use that to know when your 5 minutes is up. And then when you're getting close to your 1 minute, to the 1 minute mark, I'm going to click a little ringer. It's going to sound like that, a little ding. That means you have 1 minute left. So when you hear that, it means you got 1 minute left. All right. With that, I'll have Chris Alexander, Jessica, I think Tarek, go ahead and come on. And I'm going to switch over and look at my list of people who asked to make a public comment here tonight. Hold on 1 minute while I open that up again. And so I do have a list of people who, when they registered, they indicated they want to make a comment, and I'll start with them first. And then after we're done, you all can raise your hand and we'll go through those people next. So, and Ryan's going to unmute you as we go along here, and I'll let you know when you're ready to go. So the first name I have on my list here is Roger Rail. Then after Roger is going to be Dan Bicknell. So I know Roger is here tonight, and Roger, you can go ahead whenever you're ready and make your comments. And remember, you have 4 minutes, and remember to state any organization you might be with. You can go ahead when you're ready.
Okay. Gelman argues that it needs its old 22 parts per billion daily maximum discharge limit to remain in effect because of uncertainties with the purge water it's getting from its new purge wells at the core. And in fact, one of those wells, when they purged and started treating it, it didn't exceed the dioxane daily maximum, but it did exceed the bromate limit of 10 parts per billion. And that's because that well, TW24, had more bromide in it than some other purge wells. Now, it's curious that Gelman didn't know that, because that well, even though it was only used recently, was actually drilled in 2017. So why did Gelman not sample for dioxane and bromide in that well when it first drilled it? It knew it was going to be a purge well. They should have been prepared and defined the problem properly and upgrade their system if needed to meet the old limits. And remember, those old limits were based on 85 parts per billion Michigan cleanup standard. And in the interim, of course, Michigan has retightened that partially to its 7.2 to match the EPA's 2010 guidelines for dioxin. So Gelman is being allowed to, because it didn't do its due diligence in defining the nature of the problem it's trying to solve, it's trying to use an undersized treatment system to skate by. And that should not be allowed. The dioxin, we should have dioxin standards to match what we need to protect our water supplies and our waters of the state. Also, I will note that today I got the monthly discharge report that I always get from Gelman. And for the last 4 months, their average monthly dioxin levels were below that 5.0 parts per billion that the administrative law judge ruled and should have gone into effect. So just to note that if it was retightened back to the judge's, administrative law judge's 5.0 parts per billion, Gelman would have made that limit in the last 4 months. So I think I'll leave it there and send the rest of my comments in written form. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Roger, for your comment. Been told that Dan Bicknell is not in our attendee list. If Dan is here and you're logged in under another name, just go ahead and raise your hand and we'll call on you eventually. So we're going to keep going on with our list here. Next people up are Kathleen Knoll and then Linda Smith. And so Kathleen Knoll is there. And just a reminder that if there are a few of you watching this together and you got another person in the room with you that wants to make a comment, just let me know and we'll pass the mic over to them. So Kathleen Knoll, you can go ahead and make your comment. You're unmuted.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm a trustee from Scioto Township. I have been the township representative to the card group for the last 8 years, and I've been the township point person on Gelman issues for the last 8 years. We submitted detailed written comments. I just want to touch on key factors in our comments, and they're similar to some of the questions and comments we've already heard. We feel that Gelman should be required to follow the discharge limit of 9 parts per billion when discharging partially treated water into Honey Creek. Now, I see in the permit, it states the discharge permit is to an unnamed tributary of Honey Creek. The basis of decision memo concludes that a 9 part per billion limit is the best professional judgment treatment based effluent limits. Gelman has responded that they would like to maintain a higher effluent level, which is approximately 22 parts per billion. We urge EGLE to require Gelman to adhere to the 9 parts per billion limit. There are no technological limitations which prevent Gelman from increasing their treatment capacity. Furthermore, Gelman has not offered any technical explanation to EGLE or to the public as to why the 9 parts per billion limit can't be achieved. There are several additional treatment technologies that are available for reducing contaminant concentrations. All of these are noted in Scioto Township's written comments. Second point I want to make is to briefly summarize our second primary comment. Gelman should not be allowed to discharge higher levels of dioxin into a tributary of Honey Creek when the partially treated water is discharged. There are numerous shallow private wells situated along the path of Honey Creek and its tributaries. Scioto Township has identified several private wells with significant levels of 1,4-dioxane contamination in its recent testing. Is that my ending? Okay.
No, sorry, that means you're a woman a lot.
Okay. These findings could be related to migration of dioxane from Honey Creek to drinking water wells. Therefore, Scioto Township does not believe that higher discharge concentrations of 1,4-dioxane are justified. We urge EGLE to lower the maximum daily discharge limit from 22 to 9 parts per billion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Linda, for your comment tonight. Okay, looking at who's up next, I got Linda Smith. Then after Linda is Molly Mashewski. So Linda, you can go ahead. You're unmuted and can make your comment.
Thank you. Linda Smith, private citizen, Scioto Township, 4144 West Liberty Road is directly west of the Gelman Sciences campus. And we have been involved with multiple monitor wells on our farm with the Gelman plume for many, many years. We are involved from a slightly different point of view in that we would like to assist Gelman to try and remediate as efficiently and effectively as possible as much of the contamination as can be done with the technology that they are using. We have noted actually very clean water coming out in the unnamed tributary to Honey Creek. The plant life and aquatics in that stream are spectacular in comparison to many other spots on the stream bed. The water may be coming out at different percentages of dioxane than other people in township would like to see for the discharge, but the area actually looks very clean, and the plant life and flora and fauna bear that out. I'd like to point out also that there are old industrial sites along the Jackson Road corridor through the center of Scioto Township that have the possibility for dioxane, 1,4-dioxane release that have not yet been formally identified. Just because we find 1,4-dioxane in Scioto Township does not mean it came from the Gelman site, especially if it's showing up in shallow wells adjacent to former industrial properties. So I ask people to remember that although Gelman certainly was a known and named contributor to this problem, they are by far not the only contributor. 1,4-dioxane is a sudsing surfactant that was used in many manufacturing plants and processes along the industrial corridor and Jackson Road over many years. As a concerned citizen, we keep a very close eye on what's happening with this situation. We have been pleased with what has been achieved. We hope that there is more to be achieved by working together. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda, for your comment tonight. Okay, next person up is Molly Makajewski. And then after Molly is Paula Globertson. Molly, you're unmuted. You can go ahead and make your comment.
All right, you were close, Jim. This is Molly Maciejewski. I am the Water Treatment Services Manager for the City of Ann Arbor. And I'm going to go through, and my comments will sound similar to what you've heard already. I do thank you for the opportunity to comment on the draft discharge permit for Gelman Sciences. Ann Arbor is deeply invested in the remediation of 1,4-dioxane contamination due to the potential adverse impacts to our drinking water source. The draft permit retains a discharge allowance of 1.872 million gallons a day of treated process water that flows into an unnamed tributary to Honey Creek, which then flows into Honey Creek, the Huron River, and into Barton Pond, which is Ann Arbor's drinking water primary source. That source provides drinking water to more than 140,000 people across the city of Ann Arbor and Ann Arbor and Scioto townships. Again, the city has already submitted written comments to EGLE on February 16th, 2024, and we requested several changes to the draft permit. I'm just going to highlight a few of those comments here. First, the best available treatment technology selection should be reanalyzed. I did hear you say tonight that the permittee has flexibility in choosing their treatment. However, I would encourage you to have a conversation about the Gelman site to talk about which treatment is the best available technology, because my understanding is that the treatment system that's been in place has been in operation since 2005, and it's worth a second look to see if there's a different treatment technology that could be used given the release of bromate into the unnamed tributary to Honey Creek, which is upstream of our intake, and the site conditions that make it challenging to use that type of treatment there. Second, the daily maximum permit limit should be changed from 22 micrograms per liter to 9 micrograms per liter to reflect the actual treatment performance. EGLE's initial calculation of treatment-based effluent limits for the daily maximum permit limit was 9 micrograms per liter. However, at the request of Gelman, EGLE retained the 22 micrograms per liter daily maximum limit to allow for operational flexibility. While the city agrees that the pump and treat volume should be increased to address plume migration, it should not be at the expense of degrading surface water quality. And then third, and most importantly, the discharge location should be moved downstream of the Barton Pond intake. It is difficult to understand or explain to our customers why EGLE allows known contaminants, which are probable carcinogens, to be discharged upstream of our intake. Moving the discharge downstream of Barton Pond would ensure protection of residents' drinking water and could allow for an increase in volume of the pump and treat system. The city is open to working with EGLE on the identification and selection of downstream discharge locations. In our written comments, and again here, we request a response from EGLE on this particular issue. I do thank you for your time tonight.
All right. Thanks, Molly, for your comments tonight. All right. Ryan's indicated that Paula is not in attendance in our attendee list here. So that was my last name of people who asked a comment when they registered. So this time I'm going to ask if anyone else that hasn't commented yet would like to make a comment. You can raise your hand on the Zoom toolbar. That'll let us know you'd like to make a comment tonight, and then I'll call your name off and unmute you as you raise your hand. And just a reminder that if I call you, make sure that you repeat your name and any association, organization you might be affiliated with. I do have a raised hand. James Diamer, if you want to go ahead and make your comment, you can unmute yourself and go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Actually, my name is pronounced Demore. Think of the more the better. So, good French name. So, my name is James Demore, and I'm currently a member of the executive board of CARD. Consequently, and I concur with all comments formally submitted by my organization with respect to this permit. However, I should also disclaim that my comments are my individual ones and do not reflect any organization or other personal affiliations. All this being said, I, along with many other stakeholders and community leaders, have been copied by Mr. Daniel Bicknell, president of the Global Environment Alliance, LLC, of his correspondence to Ms. Stiles on June 6th with respect to this permit. In considerable detail, Mr. Bicknell provided meticulous analysis of Honey Creek water flow. In particular, the analysis points to variability of flow. Sometimes it is a gaining stream, sometimes it is a losing stream. Pollutants under this permit would continue to be pumped into Honey Creek. Due to the nature of this flow, carcinogens are being pumped into homeowners' wells. A carcinogen may cause cancer at any level. Under the proposed and now expired previous permit, this would allow and has allowed homeowners' wells to be contaminated with dioxane. This new permit should be based upon the water quality standard protective of drinking water, which is 3.5 parts per billion, not the drinking water quality standard of 280 parts per billion, as in the new draft DE permit proposed. Folks, it is the role of EGLE under state law to protect the public from contamination. I should note that legislation is pending in the legislature to expand EGLE's role in removing pollutants and other public safety measures. However, even today, frankly, I find it obscene to endanger children and families and homes under a permit that merely goes along with the notion of this is the way we have already done it. This permit should not be approved. Should a permit be issued, at the very least, even under current Michigan law, this must be, at most, a 3.5 parts per billion near South Township homeowners' wells. This is just not happening currently. Clearly, as others have said, another method must be used entirely, either by treatment at the site or conveyance, if feasible, and only if feasible, by pipe downstream from homeowners' wells in Barton Pond, the source of drinking water for the city of Ann Arbor, as Ms. Majeski indicated. This permit does not protect the public from 1.4 dioxane, a known lethal carcinogen, a violation of EGLE's charter and of state law even currently. Consequently, if not revised as suggested above, this permit must be rejected and previous permitting to be revoked. I appreciate you for considering my remarks. I am James DeMoore.
All right. Thanks, James, for your comment tonight. Okay, at this time, I'm going to ask if anyone else would like to make a comment that has not commented yet already. If you do, you can raise your hand. Okay. I'm not seeing anyone else who is not. If somebody has already spoken and you think about you want to add more comments, you can submit comments in a variety of different ways, and I'll put that up there on the screen right now. So if you want to add on more details. With that, team, I'm going to go ahead and read our closing statement then, and then we'll do some wrap-up activities here as we wrap things up. Okay, just want to make sure no one else raised their hand. All right. So as a reminder, the public comment period for accepting written comments is open until June 30th, 2024. The department will consider all comments received. Written comments may be submitted online in My Enviro database, a link that was provided in the chat directly to comment in a submittal form. So you saw Ryan had put that in the chat. Comments can also be submitted to Jessica Stiles at the following address: Water Resources Division, EGLE, P.O. Box 30458, Lansing, Michigan, 48909-7958. Thank you for your comments and your cooperation tonight. We appreciate your interest and that you took the time to be here today. The public hearing is now closed, and thank you again. Oops. Well, that. All right. So I just want to wrap up with a few things here. First of all, if anyone has comments after tonight, you can go ahead and contact Jessica, and her phone number and email is up there on the screen. Also, I think Ryan put that in the chat as well. I'm going to leave that up there, and I'm going to see if Christine, do you have any remarks you'd like to make as you wrap things up tonight?
I did. Thank you, Jim. I'd like to thank everyone for taking the time tonight, this evening, to share comments. We're very interested in the comments that we heard tonight, and we will be carefully evaluating them as we look through in order to make a permitting decision. So again, appreciate the care and the time that you all spent. And I think Jim is leaving Jessica's contact information out. So if you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out. Hope you all have a good rest of your evening.
All right. Thank you, Chris. Yeah, just a reminder that tonight's public hearing was recorded, just like we record all of our public meetings, and we post it on the YouTube channel and on our YouTube channel in the next couple of days. So if you just search EGLE, EGLE, YouTube, you should find it, and yeah, you should be able to find it right on there, a recording of it. So if you know somebody that missed tonight's meeting and wants to listen in, you can forward them that link. I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight and for your participation and spending some time with us this evening. I know it's hard to get away in a nice summer evening, but we appreciate that you were here today and spent the time with us. And I want to thank our EGLE team, our large EGLE team who was here with us today and took time to answer questions and present. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and have a great rest of your evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you.